So this is the GMMK Pro, and you've probably seen a lot of people talking about it by now. You might have even seen my sound demo videos. There's a lot to talk about with this keyboard. Now, the first thing I want to cover is, first of all, keyboards, very preference-based, but there are some objectively good and objectively bad things about keyboards. We're going to be going into that today, and we're going to be taking a deep dive at what the GMMK Pro offers. Now, I think it's important to note that these keyboards come in two different colors, one being black and the other in a white ice. Now, when I think of white ice, I definitely don't think of silver. I think of more of my cable color there, which is a bright white. I guess this is what they consider to be their white ice. Let it be known that I personally think and view this as more of a silver color. And at the current time of this video, this keyboard retails for about $170. I don't know if that's going to be changing anytime soon, but it is $170 US. And just kind of like the Icky 68 Aurora, there's a lot of different accessories for this. Definitely not as many as that particular keyboard, but there are still some that they offer, for example, different plates, different knob colors. But I'm not going to go into details about the accessories. If you guys want to take a look at those, they'll be on Glorious's site. A lot of other people are doing wonderful reviews on those. I just want to talk about what I know best, which is these keyboards. Alright, so first thing I want to do is actually open this thing up, and I want to show you what you actually get inside one of your kits. Ignore all my fingerprints. I do think that assembly of a board is also very important. An easy to assemble board usually is more beginner friendly, and that's something I do appreciate. Now, you're not going to get keycaps, you're not going to get switches, but you do get a whole bunch of other things. I will show you here in 1 second. I will also show the disassembly from the backside. Alright, now that we've opened up our black unit, let's see what's inside. So we're going to have our top frame over here, which we actually have to remove this little guy over here, the knob. And now that we got the top frame off, we're greeted with our PCB/plate assembly. This is going to be one big unit since it's screwed together, but be careful, lift it from the bottom and up. There is a daughter board cable. We're going to slowly remove that. And now we are greeted with our PCB. And this is a hot swap PCB, as you guys can see, as well as our top construction. In the box, you are going to be getting your base, this foam at the bottom here, daughter board cable, top frame, plate, and PCB. But I also wanted to stop for 1 second to remind you guys, this board's $170. There are kits out there that cost much more, and some that cost in the $200 to $300 range that are considered an entry level. But we have been seeing a rise of budget-friendly boards, like the Icky 68, like the NK 65, as well as a whole bunch of other things like the Portico and the Ramakara. The point I want to get across is, while this is a cheaper board, it is not exempt from criticism. And before we get into too much of the case construction or quality of the case, I did want to bring up a big thing, in which is probably the most commented thing right now, the stock stabs. I do want to make it apparent that I do think the stock stabs need work. They don't feel good. I tried so hard to get them to not rattle, and I just couldn't do it. I tried more lubricant. I tried reseating everything. I tried putting some bandage mods underneath. Everything you guys can think of, I tried. Nothing I could do can make those stock stabs not rattle. However, one small thing, or big thing, however you guys want to view it, that I found out with these stock stabs is they might actually be a different size than what we in the keyboard world are used to. And by that, I mean the housings are a little smaller, and I'm not sure if that's affecting the sound at all. How that came to be was when I actually swapped out the stabs for the Duroc stabs, I noticed there was a bunch of plate tightness. I also tried cherry stabs as well as some other stabs as well. Could not get anything that wouldn't be super tight on those plates. I do feel like if you want the best experience out of your stabilizers and you want that really smooth aftermarket modded feel where you're not going to have a lot of that rattling noise, you're better off buying a set of stabs if you wanted to invest your money in this board. But I also feel that it's very important to note that these do come with the board, so it's not like you have to go out of your way to buy them. I would have loved to see an option where the bare bones kit did not even come with stabs at all. I think that would have been a lot better for anyone who is now dreading the fact of going to buy an additional part. And the best way I can really show you guys what I meant by that plate tightness is on the brass plate. These are the stock stabs. They fit flush, they go in very easily, and they remove very easily as well. And you guys can see from that side profile, they sit nice and flush, and again, they remove nice and easy. If we try that again with a Duroc stab, this is where the trouble part comes in. I can't even get this in the actual plate. This requires a lot of force. And that's what really leads me to believe there's some sort of tolerance gap that you really have to start pushing. And you can see I'm using a lot of strength here too to get this in. And it's not fully in. And this is on the brass plate. I had to do the same thing with the polycarbonate and aluminum. It wasn't as bad on the polycarbonate, but it was still very much there on the aluminum. This is kind of where I'm a little bit disappointed. This poses a big problem too. For anyone who's new to the keyboard scene and wants to actually swap this out, this is not easy to do, and this is kind of nerve-wracking. So this is very disappointing. And it really makes me feel like Glorious just really wanted people to go with their stabs and nothing else. However, I can't really recommend their stabs, and we'll talk more about them later when we talk about the goat stabs. So there is something else I wanted to point out with the plate and the foam. The plate, as you guys can see, has foam underneath. Now, out of the box, that foam is actually glued to the underside of the plate in one small area. I have no idea why they did this. I did ask, and it seems like the answer that came about was so it didn't slip. Now, I did remove, like I said, the glue from both of mine, and there's no slippage. So, bit odd, but if you guys are opening this up and wanting to get rid of that, just get rid of it. Now, on the topic of plates, it does come stock with an aluminum plate, but honestly, I do feel like the polycarbonate plate that I have in the white ice variant is actually the best plate out of all three of these. I did not like the brass. I do feel like the aluminum inside this particular case feels weird. Now, again, this is a total preference thing. I did actually prefer the aluminum more than I preferred the brass, but I do feel like the polycarbonate had the best sound profile to my preference out of all three of the plates. And I typically like aluminum. The problem is with this aluminum plate here is the spacebar as well as the bottom row felt a little high pitched, and I did not like that. It did not go with the rest of this board. And the reason why I actually swapped to an ABS plastic opposed to the rest of the PBT caps on here was because this felt and sounded the best to my ears. Now again, this is highly preference based. So if you guys like the way this sounded, the sound tests are in my YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the bio as well for that. And I don't want to focus too much on bad things with this, so I kind of want to go back and forth between good and bad points. One really good point is just how well built this keyboard is. What I really liked about this is the finish. The finish on both of my units were very good. And one really big plus that I really liked about this particular board was the channel it had for the daughter board. As you guys can see, there's little clips to where it kind of locks the daughter board cable in place. I really like that, and I wish more boards would do that. Typically what happens is these daughter boards, the cable for them kind of go all over the place and kind of makes putting down your construction of the case a little bit more difficult. So kudos to that. That was actually really cool. But with that being said, I do have to discredit it some points for its gasket implementation. Now, by default, the gaskets are very shallow on the top of the frame. In fact, they were so shallow that I had to add the extra gasket material that it came with. With that being said, there is a very high level of compression that happens between the gaskets here on the top and on the bottom. Now, what does that mean for your typing experience? Well, it's going to be a bit stiffer. The gaskets still do some of their job, which is absorb some of that impact and reduce some of that weird noise or feeling that you get from the metal case, but it doesn't have that softer typing experience that you typically would find in a gasket build. And I did try without adding the extra gaskets as well. It just didn't hit. It didn't feel very good. I feel like I needed to add those to get the true effect of the gaskets in this case here, just because these are so shallow. And I'll show you guys with a close-up right now. So this one over here in the corner is one of those gaskets that I did not replace because they did not have gaskets that size, nor did I cut one down. That's how shallow it is. There's really nothing there, as you guys can see. It's blended right inside the case. Now on the ones that I added the extra gasket material, they've compressed a bit from being inside the case, but they're there. But yeah, overall was not too happy with the gasketing on the top piece of the frame here. And you guys can see too, there's some weird effects that happen to the gaskets. Some of them shift. So the extra one here I put on did shift a little, and you can see some damage that actually happens to these gaskets. Now on the bottom frame, it's a little better in terms of quality. That damage is not there, fortunately, except for some of them, which you guys can see over here. And the gaskets have all the room in the world to do their thing. And with that being said, I urge you guys to, if you guys again pick up this board, play around with it, see what feels best to you. Again, this is just my preference. All right, now to go to another point which I just really didn't like, which is how many screws are on this plate slash PCB assembly. There's a lot. And actually, if we freeze frame right now and count all the screws, there's a lot of screws. But yeah, again, this is probably a deterrent from someone who's going to be opening this up just to replace those stabs we mentioned earlier. It's difficult, and honestly, it's kind of a pain to unscrew this thing and swap out stabs if you want to do this more than once. Thankfully, you probably only have to do this one time though, so there's that. And when we put this back together, this ends up being a very stiff typing experience because of how many screws and how stiff this whole entire area is. Even with the polycarbonate version of the plate, there's really not a lot of flex with this. So it ends up being a stiffer typing experience. Now, is that a bad thing? No, not for everybody. Some people love stiff typing experiences. I prefer a mix of both, and these days I'm leaning more towards the softer typing experience. And I guess that begs the question of, who is this board actually for? The answer is I'm not sure. I think the board crosses a really cool line by introducing more availability to the market for mechanical keyboards, but I feel like there was some stuff in here, for example the stabs and even the gaskets, that could have been done a lot better. I do feel like the plate PCB construction kind of makes it a deterrent from newer builders, as well as, again, having to buy a few more parts being my recommendation of a PC plate, as well as my recommendation of picking up aftermarket stabs. So there is some work going to be put into this. Now, for argument's sake, a lot of the other starter boards don't even come with stabs, so you will have to take that apart and assembly is required anyways. I think the confusion here is this was marketed as something that you can just pop in switches and be good to go. However, from my experience with most of these projects, I end up tinkering around with them anyways, so it's not a big deal to me. However, it might be a big deal to you. So again, use your own judgment here and kind of come to a conclusion with the information that's being presented. But here's the thing though, guys, I actually think the board sounds and feels pretty good. After all said and done, you can get past all those minor inconveniences mentioned in the video. I think there is something beautiful to be had, especially for $170. I understand this is probably going to be a lot of people's first build, and I don't want to scare anyone away from buying it. These are just things that I've noticed, and I do think that with anything in life, there's always room for improvement. I actually quite liked my version of the polycarbonate and linear. I've been using it off and on for the last 2 weeks, and it's been an enjoyable experience. And I would love to see more changes going into a version 2 of this if that ever does come to fruition. I think there's a lot of good things to be had in criticism. Now, I know I just said this review was about the board, but I also wanted to review the standalone Glorious Goat stabilizers. I'm not sure why they're called Goat. So these are transparent housings, and they're the same ones, with one exception, well actually 2, that you get with the stock GMMK Pro board. And as you guys can see, the wires are gold, and you do get a 7U wire and a 6.25U wire, as well as some 2U wires and your housings and stems. And if you guys notice, so these are metal washers, which I do not recommend for anything other than the glorious GMMK Pro. So the point of those washers, and in the normal case you get something like a nylon or a plastic, is to break contact between the metal screw and anything that might short on the PCB. And when you have a normal solderable PCB, there's a lot of options in some cases. So for example, a split backspace or a split right shift, that would break the contact for some of those additional holes that you'd get in the PCB of where the pin would go through. So at this point in time, I cannot really recommend either the stab or the washers that come inside of it. And I don't really know why these are even in here. With the Glorious board, it's a hot swap board and it has a fixed layout. So there's no real purpose to even use washers. That's why you didn't see them included with the board. But again, I cannot recommend this for your next project where you need washers and a stabilizer. First of all, because the stabilizer is just odd and I can't figure out why they rattle, and for the washers. But yeah, guys, that's all I really have for the Glorious board here. If you guys want more about this, I'll be doing a live stream teardown the same day that this comes out at 7 p.m. where we're going to completely go through this, and I'm going to give you guys more in-depth thoughts about the board, stuff that I didn't really feel like needed to be in a quick, roughly 10-minute, hopefully this is 10-minute video. But I hope this made your decision to purchase or pass a little easier on this board. And if you guys like this kind of content, please leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, do whatever you guys need to, and thank you again for stopping by. Love you.